Welcome to the My Personal Football Coach Youth Soccer Player Development Podcast, episode 45 with Jimmy Shan.
Welcome to mypersonalfootballcoach.com's Soccer Player Development Podcast. Discover all the secrets, hints and tips about soccer player development and soccer coaching from some of the leading figures in world soccer. Here's your host, Saul Isaacson Hurst.
Hi guys, welcome back to another show. We've got a fantastic guest for you this time on the show, someone who's had really an incredible career already in the game, Jimmy Shan. Now, Jimmy Shan, obviously, some of you don't know, he was the manager of West Bromwich Albion. But what was interesting, obviously, he worked his way up throughout the club, throughout the academy. Famously, he'd worked with the 8s, and the 7s, all the way to the first team. Little bit of history before that as well. He worked at Birmingham before that and full time, and has got quite an incredible journey working at all the age groups, all the development levels, and at the pro game at the highest level. So incredible career already, as I said, and some fantastic knowledge to share with us. I found this real fascinating. He's really inspiring, Jimmy, obviously, because he has worked his way up. Didn't have a playing career as such, so worked his way up through his coaching, his quality as coaching and his methodology. And interesting to think about how he secured full-time positions in the academy at Birmingham very quickly, and then obviously at West Brom, working his way all the way up to the top. So someone obviously to learn lots of, very inspiring, like I said. So really privileged Jimmy came on the show. You should check him out as well on Twitter. He's always sharing some fantastic sessions that he does on his little tactics board there. So as you said, this one's a real great one. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. Also now I've got a big announcement. Just want to make a big announcement now. Really happy that we can finally announce the release of the first position-specific course on My Personal Football Coach. So this is a world first. There's nothing like it in the world in terms of a position-specific course available on an app. Now, so the first one is a forward-wide player course. So if you play as a forward, as a 7 or 11, or anywhere higher up the pitch, this is ideal for you or any coach who's interested in learning more about the position, coaching the position individually and within a game. This individual position-specific course includes detailed tutorials about all the technical and tactical areas of the wide forward play. Also, it includes position-specific drills that you can do, position-specific ball mastery, and also position-specific 1v1 skills and 1v1 elements. So I'm really happy about this. It's taken a long time, been working up this for a long time, but I'm really happy about it. So if you're interested in checking out the new My Personal Football Coach position-specific skills, the wide forward course, just go to My Personal Football Coach, click on player, and then go to the position-specific courses. So like I said, this is really unique, really happy how this looks. So go there, check it out if you want to take your game to the next level. Just quickly as well, just want to say, if you are enjoying the show, please do leave a review. It really does help. And finally, just want to say, look, next month's Baltimore, the big convention out in America, the United Soccer Coaches. Looking forward to going out there. If you want to connect with me, just drop me a message. I'm really looking forward to connect with as many people as possible, particularly people, DOCs, ODP coaches, people who want to understand how their club partnership can take their club to the next level. So really excited about that. Hopefully I'll see some of you guys in just January at the conference. But before that, let's get into the show. So, Jimmy Shan, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Can you just give us a little bit of a brief outline of your playing and coaching experience to this date?
Yeah, so playing, really no notable playing experience. Was at Warsaw as an under 15, under 16. Broke my ankle as a 16-year-old and never got offered a YTS. Managed to play at some decent enough level at semi-pro and got invited to probably 3 or 4 clubs to try, but nothing materialised. So fell into coaching in 2001, where I started working for the community scheme at Birmingham City. Very quickly transitioned to working as a part-time coach within their academy before taking a full-time role in their academy as assistant academy manager. Moved across to West Brom in 2006, where I've pretty much worked with every age group, from working in the pre-academy under 7 under 8, working in their 12 to 16 program, under 18s, under 23s, then progressed as a first team coach, and finally, leaving the football club, having had a 3-month spell as caretaker head coach.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's pretty much well documented. You've worked at all levels of the game. You say from under 8s all the way to the first team. Just give us, just roll it back now. Tell us about your first ever coaching job, and what was that, and how it came about, and what were the experiences like?
Yeah, so I used to, prior to going into Walsall, I used to play for a local team, and it was my mate's father who ran the team, and he kind of took that team all the way through to under 18s. Had a couple of years out, and then started again. And I'd come across him, I'd met him in the street, and he'd said to me that he'd started back up, and would I go and help him? And that he was taking another 7 team, a team called Cadbury Athletic, and I said, yeah, I'll come down and went and give him a hand, and really enjoyed it. He then told me that Birmingham City were doing a coaching qualification, which was then the level 2, the C licence. I should enrol on it, so I enrolled on that. Did a week's intense course at their training ground, and at the end of the week, their community officer asked me if I wanted to do some part-time work for him. So I did a soccer camp, a fun week. Did that, thoroughly enjoyed it again. Felt that I did an okay job, and then he offered me a full-time job. So my first role was in 2002, working for the community scheme at Birmingham, which involved going into schools and taking over PE lessons, predominantly working in after-school clubs, doing development centres, Saturday morning clinics, doing the fun weeks, and that's kind of how I got into the coaching role. So
that full-time role came up pretty quick, right?
It did, yeah, it did, and kind of my progression from going from community football into what I deem as an elite level in terms of working at an academy, that happened quite quickly as well. So I think I started January 2002 at the community scheme, and by the July or the August of that same year, I got offered a part-time role taking in the 12s at the academy. So one thing that I was, and I've always continued to do, I've always put the hours in and always looked to improve myself, and and to look at different resources and watch different coaches to try and improve. And I think my time working with the community scheme and being proactive and asking the academy if I could sneak in and watch sessions, I think that stood me in good stead, for them to knowing first and foremost I had the right attributes and personality to work hard and to improve.
So let's, because that's 2 interesting points you made there. Just firstly then talk about your time at the community scheme, working in those after school clubs and those soccer schools and stuff like that. How important was that for you in terms of your grounding as a coach, and what were your main takeaways from those sorts of experiences?
For me, I think it was a vital time. So of course, you a lot of the time in these after school clubs, you're a glorified babysitter, and half the kids don't want to be there. It's a case of mummy and daddy are working late, and it's a cheap alternative to getting someone to look after the kids. So being able to manage people and to communicate and just trial and error with sessions, I think it was a vital stage. And the early parts of my community days, I probably had about 3 or 4 sessions and used to repeat them, and had nothing more than that, So it was a wonderful time for me to be able to, when I came across something new, to be able to experiment and to see what worked, and even daft things on, and being quick at putting out cones and picking cones up, and making my pretty straight lines, or even daft things like that. I think it was a vital part into the makeup of being the coach that I am today.
And what do you think it was that inspired them to give you a full-time role? And that, as you all know, full-time roles in football are like gold dust. What do you think? What was the trigger that said, "Why, this guy's got something about him that's given the full-time role"?
Well, the academy manager at the time was a gentleman by the name of Stuart Hall, and Stuart's he's been an NFA tutor. Stuart really is probably my first real mentor as a coach, and the level of detail, the level of information and understanding of the game that gentleman has. He's very, very good. I'd put him right up there with the great of Dick Bate, the great of Dick Bate. So although he had all this fabulous knowledge and information and detail, one thing Stuart always said was, first and foremost, you have to have an appropriate personality to be a coach, and the players have got to like you. They've got to warm to you, and I think I had an infectious personality, and I was able to add enthusiasm into my work, and and to be real keen in that sense. So I think first and foremost, I got offered a job to work part-time within the academy because of my personality and because I displayed the traits that I was able to communicate, able to be enthusiastic, to inspire people. Nothing to do with my knowledge of the game, because that was very, very limited, and my experiences of coaching and and putting on sessions was very, very limited. So I think first and foremost, having a personality that he saw something within that personality that he thought that I'd be able to inspire the kids, and obviously show the right traits in terms of having a growth mindset and wanting to learn and improve myself.
And so you mentioned as well there about sneaking in and asking to come and have a look and that sort of thing. How important was that in terms of getting that opportunity?
Yeah, really important. Just to come across new sessions, and and to watch different coaches communicate, and and how they structured their information and how much information they gave, and the different interventions they used. So that was really important for me, and and really at the time that I went in to do it, I didn't have any great aspirations, or my thought process wasn't that I'm going to work at academy level full time. It was just a case to go in and try and steal some sessions. So the job that I was doing in terms of working development centres and the community based stuff, just so I could I could have a bigger session library if you like. But what it did do as well, watching other people work, and then I started to replicate their sessions, and not getting carried away with myself at any stage, and I still wouldn't know, and I thought maybe I could do this, maybe I could work at this elite level, and unfortunately 6 months later they gave me an opportunity.
So then let's talk about your first role in the under 12s coach at the Birmingham at the academy. What was that like initially in terms of the difference between working in the foundation? Talk about your session design and all those different factors.
Night and day. Obviously, you're working with an elite player. The academy at the time had some outstanding individuals and some outstanding talent in. I think the year group below that had the likes of Nathan Redmond, and there's a couple of other players that have gone on to get careers in the game, Callum Riley. So there was a high calibre player, and I kind of went in there, and I'd never had any prior experience into running a team, or into structuring a team. So I was very much thrown in the deep end. I was fortunate the then assistant academy manager Richard Stevens kind of shadowed me. So in terms of what I was doing in the prior 6 months in going in and watching people work, he kind of really was my shadow, and and kind of was the voice in my ear that if an area was too big or it was too small, or it wasn't something wasn't quite right, he was that voice in my ear, and and trying to challenge me and check me. So that was vital. But it gave me confidence on in terms of when you're turning up with your team, and you're the lead coach on the side of the pitch, and you're up against somebody who's got some experience in some big clubs. It gave me lots of confidence that that maybe potentially I could make a real good career of becoming a coach.
And so tell us a bit about then what are your duties of an under 12 academy coach?
I think we were a little bit different at the times at Birmingham. So we were probably more heavily into developing technique as opposed to developing the play tactically. So everything that we did pretty much evolved around basic technical principles in terms of the basic punch pass and moving the ball quickly with a purpose, recognising when to play back foot, recognising when to play safe side, working on body shape, on getting people front face and getting people turn quickly. So a lot of the stuff probably suited my coaching experiences and my coaching development, because tactically I didn't really know an awful lot about the game in terms of delivery. So a lot of the sessions, although they'd have a tactical element, a lot of them were heavily geared at under 12 level towards that technical refinement and technical development. And it really wasn't until the under 13 and the 14 age groups that the crossover, where the more experienced coaches later at Birmingham City, that they'd start to implement the tactical side of the game. So for me, it was understanding the playing shape of playing a 4-4-2, making sure the midfield plays very, very simply played on different lines, making sure the front two played on different lines. One was a 9 and one was a 10. Would have full-time width via our wide players, and then very, very crudely and simply without the ball, we just fell into a 4-4-2. So the tactical element, there wasn't an awful lot. It was more so, those key technical attributes that the academy deemed to be very, very important at that moment in time.
And what sort of things did you have to do as a team coach? Not obviously just running sessions and stuff like that. What are the other things you had to do? What are your roles and responsibilities? I mean, people are most interested to hear, what goes on behind the scenes as an under-12s coach.
Some time ago, so I'm trying to get my mind back to that. So, I mean, each player also had like a homework diary, so they would comment on the session. They would comment and list down what they learned, and they'd hand these books in every Saturday. So Saturday morning session, they'd hand them in, and you'd have 3 or 4 days of the week of their session and an evaluation from their game. So there was that aspect of
what about general admin and stuff in terms of looking after things, organisational things, in terms of match planning, match squad, those sorts of areas I'm talking about.
I mean, we're talking back now at 2002, 2003. So, back then there wasn't a great deal. There was a session plan. So there was obviously organising your session plan and making sure that was logged, and there was an evaluation on that. In terms of anything organisational, pretty much everything at the academy at Birmingham at that time was there on your, it was there laid out for you. So, maybe on a Saturday after the session, grab the kit, check the kit, make sure everything's in place in there, make sure you've got your team book and things like that. But very, very little, as opposed from really turning up and making sure that you've planned and prepared your session and delivering it. With the added responsibility of these little homework diaries. So in terms of really organising things, there was very, very little to do, if I'm being honest with you.
And what was it like in terms of you're a new coach, a new thing? How much pressure was there in that environment? Was it intimidating? I mean, how did you deal with that?
Yeah, well, I would have been 22, 23, so I would have been probably the second youngest coach there, and I think the biggest resistance that I had was from the parents. So, under 12s, it's their first time into 11-a-side football. They obviously knew that I didn't have a lot of experience because I would have been a baby-faced coach. So I had quite a lot of resistance from the parents on them expecting their sons to be in an elite football academy and to be led by a coach who's got vast experience. So I had to overcome that. As I said to you, I had no prior understanding of taking a team up until that point. So I recall my first ever game was away at Everton. We took three outfield subs and an outfield goalkeeper. Now, I understood and knew that the game time was divided differently. So we played 3 25s. The last 25 was split into 2 12.5-minute periods. Now, I didn't know they had to share the minutes with the players. So my first game, I went to Everton and drew 1-1. And I was absolutely buzzing. But 3 subs probably only got a maximum of 50. The most one player got was 15 minutes. I didn't understand that you had to share the minutes and share the development. So, that was a new thing for me, and one that that I immediately had a phone call from the assistant academy manager telling me what I did wrong. So, there was a lot of resistance from the players, and then obviously me making that error on my first game kind of added to that pressure. And I think looking around me, and there was lots of coaches within the academy who had some wonderful experience, and some wonderful knowledge and wonderful sessions. That also was a challenging factor and challenging time.
And so tell us about your next role at Birmingham, your full-time role there.
Yeah, well, I think by the time I went full-time, I had 2 years under my belt, and those 2 years wasn't me just taking the 12s. I went and worked with the 7s and 8s pre-academy. I went and assisted the under-16s, so I began to get some real coaching hours into me, some real exposure to working with different age groups. So kind of by the time that I went in full-time within the academy, I felt I had a greater level of experience, a greater level of knowledge, and I made that transition. So, I'd really, really put a lot of hard work into those prior 2 years in getting some grass contact time and coaching hours. And I felt I was kind of ready for that next challenge. And my role then was to oversee the 9 to 16 program. So, just to make sure that we had a technical program and a tactical program in place for those age groups. So, I think at the time I kind of thought that I knew everything. Although I'd like to think I've never really had a coaching ego, and I wouldn't have come across that way. But looking back now and reflecting on on where my journey's gone and evolved, I really didn't know an awful lot. It was a case of at that moment in time, it was just trying to deliver and give the coaches underneath me my support, and the players the best of whatever knowledge I had available. But again, it gave me the opportunity to get in full time and just to crudely give me the chance to get those hard yards in and get on the grass and make many mistakes.
And what was that like in terms of day-to-day life, in terms of lifestyle? For instance, obviously people associate full-time football with a very glamorous type of position. I mean, but what are the realities of working full-time for a football club?
Well, I think my first 5 years working in football, even in the crossover, working part-time, more so as a full-time, 7-day weeks, and more often than not, five evenings a week. And did I need to do that? Could I have worked 6 days? Yeah. Could I have only worked 3 nights? Yeah. But I think me being me, I wanted to improve. I was desperate to improve. I wanted to get better, and the only way to do that is to grasp it. So far from being a glamorous lifestyle, there are many sacrifices, that I'd made on that journey, that I continued to make on that journey. And obviously, as the industry progressed and the introduction of EPPP, there were a lot more admin requirements. So you speak about the organisational stuff at Birmingham, it was minimal. There was practically nothing. All of a sudden, when EPPP come in, there's lots of things that you need to do, and 6-weekly reviews, and and different things like that, and target setting and individual plans for players. So it's far from a glamorous lifestyle, but one that I fell in love with, and I fell in love with the process, and very passionate to want to improve and develop as a coach and as a person.
When you're working across the 9 to 16s there, did you have a favourite age group you preferred working with?
Probably the 16s, probably the ones who were at the end of the journey, because they obviously physically they're more matured. They've been through a process of lots of trial and error, and of course them themselves making lots of mistakes. And most importantly for me, it was more so at Birmingham than it was at West Brom. A real competitive focus. So match days on a Saturday when the 16s were playing the same time as the 18s, there was a real focus on winning, and I've always been very competitive, and I liked it, not to the detriment of development and not to the detriment of your playing style and your playing philosophy, but the players really grasped that it was about winning, and they were very competitive, and of course they were all competing with each other, and against themselves to try and land a full-time scholarship. So that probably was my favourable one, just because of the level of competitiveness that they had.
And I mean, you mentioned earlier about maybe that tactically you weren't as progressed maybe as you could be. So how did you upskill yourself in that time from being a part-time coach and being head of 9 to 16s? What did you do to make yourself better in that particular area?
I think watch lots of games. I think that's vitally important. When there's a game on the TV, and if you're not able to watch it, record it and go back on it. Getting out and speaking to people. As I said to you, I had two really good mentors at Birmingham, in Stuart Hall, who loved the game. Stuart was very much of a Dutch kind of way of thinking, and at that moment in time, quite forward thinking. He was ultra 4-3-3. So in terms of tactics and different systems, a lot of academies at that time were playing 4-4-2, and we were at Birmingham. It was only up until the under 15, under 16 and under 18 years they tweaked and played 4-3-3. So getting around people and being inquisitive and watching people work gave me the opportunity to understand it a little more, and and going back to it again, getting back on the grass and and me putting it into practice and making bags and bags of mistakes. But I'd always been, as a player, people used to describe me, because I was quite small as a youngster, and not very well developed. I was quite a late developer in terms of my physical stature and build. So I was always very technical, and people always said I had a good brain. So once kind of somebody explained something to me or saw something that I liked and I'd want to install, I've always had quite quite a good way of putting things into practice, and quite a good way of learning things and retaining things. So I think that helped massively along the way as well.
And so tell us about then you moved up to academy manager. What was that like? What was the change in your roles and responsibilities?
Yeah, so it was assistant academy manager. So again at Birmingham, it was pretty much that role of overseeing that 9-16 program. So just making sure that parent player meetings, they were scheduled in, at the appropriate times. Making sure that when there was breaks in the fixture programs, that we arranged additional fixtures, and just overseeing, CPD events for the staff and things like that. So really just overseeing and just making sure that the program that was already in place, that was just delivered, as best it possibly could be. And I've got to be honest with you, I don't think I'll put anything new in terms of a program at Birmingham. One, because of my level of knowledge and experience, and two, because there was already a very in-depth program already put in place by, as I said, two very experienced gentlemen above me. And
I mean, Birmingham has like a track record of producing players, but lots of technical, wide players, dribblers come out of that. You mentioned Redmond earlier, quite a few players like that. You talked about that technical work at the younger age groups. Anything else? Why do you think you produce, so many players in that sort of ilk? I think yes, and this continued at West Brom as well. I think a lot of the coaching program and the coaching philosophy, a lot of it was offensive. So a lot of it was based around in possession. So if you're going to have a coaching program and a coaching philosophy that you're going to be heavily steered in the direction of working offensively, it's only natural you're going to produce those players. And I was obviously at West Brom, for 13 years, and at Birmingham only for 4 or 5 years, and that's something that we seen at West Brom, that we had very much for the first 4 or 5 years as an academy and academy status. Everything was geared around what we were like with the ball, and an in possession philosophy, and in turn at West Brom as well. We produced many forward thinking players and many productive players in the final third of the pitch. And so then let's move on to your time at West Brom. How did that job come about, and what was it that you went over to do there?
So there was a change in academy manager at Birmingham, and my position as assistant academy manager was a little bit up in the air. At that time, Dan Ashworth was at West Brom, and he caught wind of it and asked me to go and speak to him. So I went across and spoke to Dan. And West Brom at the time had just had this new full-size dome put in place and been built, and spoke to Dan, who was again I suppose in the same breath as Stuart Hall, probably a little bit ahead of his time. Very, very forward thinking. He sold the program, and was able really to provide a role very, very similar to the one that was in jeopardy at Birmingham. So I jumped at the chance of going across to West Brom, and spent 13 years there.
So you went over as like an assistant academy manager.
So there was no, the kind of the one issue was that there was already an assistant academy manager put in place. And there was no real specific role for me to fill, so they made a title up of performance coach, which I worked 7 days a week, and I worked with under 7s all the way through to 16. So whenever there was a program on or an age group in that I could work with, I worked with them, and my age group on a Sunday was under 11. So that was something new for me, because I'd never, although I'd worked in the pre-academy at Birmingham and watch games at small-sided football, I'd never worked in the 5-a-side, 6-a-side, or 7-a-side team. So that was something very, very new for me as well.
So in terms of, like you say, you worked with all the age groups. I mean, how would that work in terms of each age group has a coach ready to go and support them, and you take small groups, or what exactly were you doing?
Yeah, so the 7th and 8th obviously is the pre-academy work. So again, West Brom being the forward-thinking academy that they were at that time, most clubs had their 7th and 8th in one day a week. We had ours in 2 days a week. So every Monday and every Friday I'd work the 7th and 8th. The 16s, Dan Ashworth as academy manager, he took. So I assisted him with the 16s and the 15s on a Monday evening as well. And then West Brom were one of the key, the first real academies really to look at getting a score release program. So we had a score release program for the 15, 16 on a Tuesday, which again I worked on. and then one with their 9s, 10s, and 11s on the Thursday. So yeah, it was a case of when some of these age groups were in and they had part-time coaches as their lead coach, but it was in the daytime, and these part-time coaches obviously had commitments to their full-time job. I'd step in and work with those age groups, and just give me some really good exposure to working at different levels and different abilities, and got me a real good I guess experience of looking and recognising how different age groups and age groups developed and how they progressed and learned.
And tell us about working with the 7 and 8s. What was that like? What were the main challenges there with working with that age group?
I think probably first and foremost, as you'd probably guess, them being young and excitable, just making sure that there was structure and organisation, and I think that's making sure they understood the rules of the practice, and nothing was too complex for them. But of course, at their age group, it's about making things fun and making things exciting and making things challenging. And I thoroughly enjoyed it because these kids would come in, they'd be in awe of the facility, they'd be in awe of you wearing a West Bromwich Albion logo, and they just wanted to come in and impress every week. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I guess the only challenge was just making sure that they understood that that discipline aspect, in terms of that when it was session time and when it was time for the coach to speak, that their mouths and their lips were closed and their eyes were focused on you, so they could take on board information. And I have to say it was probably one of my most favourable sessions of the week, working with them because of the energy they brought into the facility as well.
And tell us a little bit about what the main differences between when you came over from Birmingham to West Brom. What were the contrast, and what was similar?
I think when I first went across, the level of player, certainly in the lower age groups, so probably from under 13 down, there was a big difference from the level of player at Birmingham to West Brom. Birmingham had been an established academy. I think West Brom, when I went there, had academy status for 1 year, so they were obviously a centre of excellence before that. So the level of player, I'd probably say wasn't as good as what was at Birmingham, so that was a little bit challenging. But they had a recruitment officer who previously worked at Birmingham, who was the best in the area. So I knew that we would end up attracting the right type of player and getting the right calibre of player into that football club. And then we had, as I keep saying, somebody who was as forward-thinking as Dan Ashworth, who had a more in-depth technical programme, probably a greater structure. So there was a lot of autonomy to the coaches at Birmingham, in terms of there'd be some set guidelines to work on, whereas at West Brom there was a proper technical and tactical curriculum that was scheduled throughout the season. So you were never told what session to deliver, but the topics and a breakdown of detail of what level of information you should enter with the players, that was something that I found very, very, very beneficial. And then they had a position-specific program, which is something that we'd done little bits of that kind of work at Birmingham, but the program that was at West Brom was really an elite program. That it was one that was devised very, 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 very cleverly, in terms of you'd work in isolation with a particular position stroke unit, and then everything was planned to bring things in together to formulate either a small-sided game or 11v11 to finish. So there were lots and lots of things that really aided my development and my thinking as a coach, in terms of the curriculums and the programs that were already in place at West Brom.
And what age group did that position-specific work start?
So that was under 12. So as I said, the under 12s at Birmingham was still very much technical, whereas the under 12s and above, there started to be a tactical shift. So, for example, the 12s at West Brom they'd have worked a Tuesday, and that would have been off their technical program, which would be broken. I'll give you an example. So 1 week maybe defending, the next week passing, the next week heading, the next week running with the ball and dribbling. So they entered throughout the season a variety of different aspects to focus on for a particular week. Sometimes the topics were 2 weeks. Every Thursday they would do their position-specific program, and then on a Saturday they would work back off their technical program with a little bit of stuff linked into the bigger picture tactically for the game. So from under 12s to under 16, that tactical program pretty much kicked in, with everything underneath that being quite similar to Birmingham in terms of being technical, but there were very much a focus on 5 key skills: so passing, receiving, attacking 1v1, defending 1v1, ball protection and ball management were the key things that we look to develop in the 9 to 11 program.
Interesting. And so, for instance, under 12, I mean, is there much movement in the positions, or are there positions set from 12, or they have favoured positions?
No, I mean during a player's journey, from my experiences at 12, that was probably the only contentious thing with the program starting so young. That how do we know that a player is going to be in that position in 4 years' time? So there were lots and lots of movement, and I guess it's just the skill set of the coach to spot that, and to see what attributes fit best for a player. So I mean, we used to do a game called snake football at West Brom, that is one that I used to do a lot within the academy setup in the schoolboy phase, and one that I kind of forgot, which was it was an 11v11, and every 3 minutes you'd blow the whistle, and the players would rotate a position, so they just snake round the position. So your left back would end up going left side of centre half until everybody's gone around the pitch, and those kind of things also enabled you to look at a player. And because we used to do it weekly, you might see, bloody hell, player X we've had him down as being a right back, but in fact, he's got good ability and good creativity and good penetration in the final third. Maybe even moving from being a number 2 to number 7, and those kind of things give you the opportunity to look at players and to see players in different positions. And I thought that was kind of something that again was unique to me as a coach, and something I thought was a clever, simplistic way to evaluate players in different positions.
And so, tell us about your next role at West Brom. How did you progress there?
Yeah, so I went into the 12-16 program. So kind of my stuff with the younger age groups, I had less involvement, but I still used to work on the 9 to 11 day release, and I still used to go down on a Friday evening to do the 7s and 8s development centre or pre-academy. The 12 to 16 gave me an opportunity to start looking at some additional tactical programs. We had more access to the players, so one of the things that I implemented when I went into that role was our 15s, 16s were already out on a school release. I got our 13s and 14s out on a school release, which meant that we were able to do obviously more contact hour, more contact time. We're able to put an additional position specific program and one that I devised, so it was very, very different to the one that was already currently being delivered on a Thursday. So that role for me helped me or develop my skill set to write programs, develop programs, evolve programs, and ultimately deliver the programs. So I think that role kind of enabled me to progress that side of my coaching journey.
And what was your next role at the club?
Yeah, so I went from there to under 18s. So youth team coach, which obviously the results are published. So as an academy, we were always development first, always about the development of the player and the progression of a player and the production of a player. But also it was a kind of that time where you had to mirror developmental football and winning football, because at any moment in time, a player could enter into the first team, a player could go and play in the reserves, a player could go out on loan. So that kind of was probably the most challenging part of my journey in trying to make sure in the working week that they did the balance between making a developmental program and a winning program, making sure we got that balance right. Because if you want to be a developmental program, sometimes perhaps what you can do is you'll put in additional sessions, which then will affect your performance. So at some stage, when HRP was first introduced, we were doing 12 hours grass contact time. Now that's great because the players are on the grass and they're developing. A byproduct of it is that more players were becoming injured, and the byproduct of it was that by the time we come to perform on a Saturday, a lot of the players were fatigued. So that was probably the most difficult, challenging role for me, in trying to ensure that the players knew how to win. Their periodisation in terms of their working week from a physical point of view enable them to have that capacity to perform on a match day, but also we had enough programs in there, enough grass contact time to develop the player.
So to give us an idea then, what's an ideal week for an under 18 leading up to a competitive game on a Saturday?
It's very, very different at different clubs. So what we did at West Brom, we trained Monday, Tuesday. So they had a single session Monday, double session on Tuesday. Their college day was on a Wednesday. They'd do a double session on the Thursday, a single session on the Friday, and then play on the Saturday. There are some clubs that shift and change their college day. So there's a local club that they have their college day on a Thursday. Now the Thursday probably is better because the boys can train harder Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They've got a day off their feet on a Thursday, and then more often than not, the session on the Friday is a light prep session. So in a periodisation for us, we'd call that a reactive day. So short and sharp, maybe a little bit of tactical work, but in terms of time duration, you've drip fed that in your working week. So maybe 10-15 minutes max, and then some reactive work in terms of some fast, tight possessions, and maybe a tight, small-sided game or three-team game to finish. So that's probably the best model in terms of performance and freshness. But I don't think it's a right or wrong. And as I said, it really is a challenge because you're wanting one hand, you're wanting to get that access to the players so often to improve them, to develop them, but also you've got to leave enough within them to be able to perform on a match day.
And how much work do you get? How much individual work do they get at that age, and how much is team based? How much chance do you get to work with those players individually on technical things, for instance, or is it more now shifted into that performance game related stuff?
Yeah, we used to do like on a Monday would be like an introductory session. So the ones that had played would probably do a 60-minute session, so it wasn't too intense. The ones who didn't play, or the ones who didn't get much match involvement as a sub, they'd do a little bit more. Tuesdays would be pretty much a DNA, so more around our principles, whether that be in possession or out of possession. Tuesday afternoon would be unit specific, so would break the group up into three bands. So the defenders would work as a unit, the midfield players would work as a unit, the front players sometimes would do that individually in terms of just working with that unit. So I might work with the front three, and the front three's topic may be penetrating runs in behind. So my aspect of my session may be that. The back four might be working on defending crosses, or defending high, or defending deep, whatever specific to them. Sometimes we'd bring it together. Sometimes we'd leave it as units and use it as individual. Thursday we used to do exactly the same program as the 12-16s in terms of that position specific program, and would jump in with the under 23s. So the 18s and 23s or 18s and 21s would come together. So they'd have their position specific program, and then, as I said, Friday really is a prep day. So there really would be during the week a decent enough balance, in my opinion, of team activity, some individual stuff where at the end of an AM session, I might say to a front player whose hold up play may have been disappointing on the weekend, we're going to spend 10 minutes, so I might just work with that centre forward, or the assistant coach might work with somebody else. So those opportunities. But I thought there was a good balance and a good variety within the week. That you got your team stuff, you had your unit specific stuff, your position specific stuff, your 11v11 stuff, and your individual stuff. So it's kind of a way of just trying to make sure that training program and the schedule ticked as many boxes as you possibly could.
Okay, so let's move on now to your first team role. How'd that opportunity come about?
So I was taking the 23s. Alan Pardew replaced Tony Pulis. Alan Pardew was relieved of his duties, and Darren, who Darren had worked as a loans manager and assisted me with the 23s before becoming Alan Pardew's first team coach. Darren took over the role as caretaker manager when he was in the Premier League, and asked me to step up with him. So we did the 6 games in the Premier League, and then off the back of the success of Darren's time in charge, he was offered the full-time job. So Darren then appointed Wayne Jacobs and Graham Jones as his assistant managers, and asked me to step up as first team coach. So that's how it transpired.
And then, so tell us about what was that like then, the initial experiences. What were the challenges of working for that first team environment with those first team players?
It were two very, very different times. So when Darren stepped up to caretaker on the Premier League, the atmosphere at the football club was rock bottom, because everything suggested that the season was done. And we were getting relegated, and a lot with a lot happens behind the scenes, and a lot goes on behind the scenes. When a club is going to be relegated, people potentially will be made redundant, people will lose jobs, wages will be affected, and things like that. So the club, in my opinion, was at rock bottom in terms of the atmosphere, in terms of the feeling for the football club, and one in my 13 years prior to that, I'd never, 12 years prior to that, I'd never experienced. So the big challenge, first and foremost, was to install a better culture, to install some belief into the players, to go back to basics, and to try and get some positive performance on the pitch. So, I think Darren done a fantastic job in terms of transforming the general atmosphere, the culture of the club, the mindset of the players, and then in turn, we had some fantastic results on the pitch. When he became permanent manager or permanent head coach, obviously the challenge was to A, rebuild a squad, B, to try and change the footballing philosophy. We'd obviously spent a long time in the Premier League on being that club that was just there, well, not just there, but one of our big priorities was to sustain Premier League status. So in a lot of games we had to play a certain way, and us then coming from the Premier League, having some Premier League players still within our squad, all of a sudden, people, the fans, the football club expected the team then to be one of the main competitors to get back promoted. So that was a challenge in going from playing a certain way and having a mindset of we were going to concede possession, we were going to sit and defend on a low block, we were going to defend deep, we were only going to look to really hurt the opposition via a counter, to changing that to we want to be a little bit more front foot, we want to press from a mid block, we want to try and regain the ball half the pitch, we want to try and be that dominant team in possession. That was a real big challenge and real big shift in terms of our playing philosophy, and one I have to say I think Darren worked, not just because he's a friend of mine, I think he worked wonders in transforming that. So I mean, if you watched two games from a year apart, you'd have seen a West Brom team on a goal kick spot the ball and go and get into a tight area where we're going to contest possession, and we're going to try and scrap from first contact and second contacts, to a team that were very, very expansive and a team that built from the back and played through the thirds and played progressive football. So that was a hell of a challenge.
So then tell us a little bit about that. How do you go about that in terms of what does that look like in terms of convincing the players they can play that way, or and what was that in terms of your session design? What did you bring to the table in terms to make that happen?
Yeah, so I mean, I think first and foremost, I think session design is a clever way to get it. So obviously there's a shift in how you work in weeks. So if you're going to be a team that are going to be as the team were, and listen, a lot of the traits defensively that the team had within them were installed by Tony Pulis, who I think is masterful in the way that he sets his teams up. That's Tony's philosophy of play. That's how he wants to set teams up. His delivery and execution on getting a team to defend compact, to be very, very difficult to break down, to play through, is exceptional. Now, a lot of Tony's work would echo that. So a lot of Tony's work would be shape work, would be 11v11 work. A lot of his work would be defending 2v2, 3v3, 4v4, then defending as a team. So, in session design, obviously we wanted to come away from that. So our session design and our shift in the way that we planned sessions changed, and it became more in possession, it became more technical, and it became more possessional based, and it became more playing through the third space. So very, 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 very simply and effectively by session design, and the type of session that we put on for the players, we would drip feed and expose them to becoming comfortable in those situations. And then
so give us an example then of like a possession exercise you did with those guys to do that.
Just directional.
So would it still be like still be an 11v11, or would it be more like a positional game based, or
no? Pretty much. I mean, we did do 11v11s, 11v11 or 10v10 without the goalkeepers in terms of a general possession. But a lot of the possession would split the group, and we always seem to work with a magic number of 20 as often as we possibly could. So there'd be two groups of 10, and just basic principles. So within your possession, we'd often do 1 4v4 plus 2, so have two neutral players. So in possession you've got the overload, so that gains that trust and gains that that ability to sell that. It's good to retain possession. It's good to be the team in possession. But on that one, just making sure that you make the pitch big, that you have passing lines. Recognising the game hasn't changed and evolved. That if you're going to exploit an opposition, you'll either play through them, round them, or over them. So again, making sure they're in those areas of the pitch, or making those key decisions on recognising when we play through, when we need to play on the outsides of people, when there's a high press and you need to go beyond it and use the airspace and play in the second space. So, just making sure that within those practices, how we wanted the game to be played, we echo with our coaching points on recognising when to play quickly, when to play carefully, when you need extra passes, when you need to lend the ball to shift people to open space to penetrate, etc. So, a lot of the possession stuff would be small base stuff, but of course, then a lot of the 11v11 stuff would start in pattern. So pattern work would often be unopposed against mannequins, just so the players got the habit of our positional play. So how brave the back four went, the shape and the position of the midfield three if we played the 3 or the 2, the front 3 making sure they fasten down the opposing team back 4. So making sure that we mastered that positional play first, and then we had specific patterns to enable us to retain, to penetrate and play through. And then of course then just trying to transfer that into the 11 stuff.
I suppose the challenges. Sorry to interrupt, mate. The challenge to relate that small sided stuff into the big game, right? And then telling players, how that look. This is what all that boxes work. How that looks like an 11v11.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we did, we had not every session, but probably 70% of the time would go into the classroom first, so the players would understand the topic we're working on, and there'd be a video session. So I'd on Keynote you can get your sessions moving with Magic Move, and I or the analysis guy would make sure that we animated the session so the players would have pre knowledge of what they're going to work on and the reasons behind it before they went on the pitch. So when we're out on the pitch on the grass, we're not spending time trying to explain the session and get the session started, because the players have already seen it. And they know how the session's been structured, how it's been built, and how it will progress. So lots of those meetings with the players for me benefited their understanding of not just the organisation of the practice, but how the session would interlink. So the technical session would interlink into the possession would interlink into the phase or the function or the bigger picture of the 11v11. So the players would have pre-knowledge prior to them going on the grass, and I think we played a good part in making sure that we explain that in a good fashion to the players.
And then talk about this. Let's go move on. Then you taking over then as the first team manager. What was that like in practice?
It was difficult because I was had a very, very good personal and professional relationship with Darren. So it was difficult. It became it come as a shock. I'd become a father for the third time only 2 days before that. So there were lots of things that happened very, very quickly. But I think with football, what you do is I think you understand that these things happen in football. You have to move on quickly. So I think for myself, I'd always, up until the point of assisting Darren and then working as a first team coach underneath him, I'd always been lead coach. So in terms of assuming that responsibility on planning, organising, game planning, that had been in my coaching DNA for the prior 17 years. So we had a good group of players, which is important as well. I'd like to think that I made that transition smoothly, and once the disappointment of Darren and Wayne and Graham losing their jobs and then moving on, and me having constant dialogue with them and them giving me my support, it was a position that I thoroughly enjoyed. I loved. I'm not going to call it. I'm going to use the word pressure, but it wasn't pressure where I was under stress. I loved having being that lead person, the one who was going to have to make the key decisions and structure things, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's kind of given me the buzz and the passion now and the want to progress and become a first team manager somewhere else.
What was it like in terms of your relationship with the players? I mean, were there any? We hear a lot about because obviously you didn't have maybe an established playing career like some people. Was that did that affect how you relate to some players?
A majority of the long-serving players I would have worked up. So at some stage they would have been injured, and they would have their rehabilitation program or their reintroduction back into first team would be prior to the 23s. So I would have worked in them. I think they would have respectfully understood and knew that I was a good coach. I had good knowledge of the game. Some of them would have played in reserve team games and under 23 games for me. The Checker Trade game got me lots of access to lots of players. And then, most importantly, don't forget, with the 6 games in the Premier League the season before, I'd almost had a year working with them. So I'd like to think that I'd gained enough respect through my coach on the grass, me speaking to the players at half time. And one of the things that Darren enabled me to do when I did on a regular basis, between myself and Graham Jones, pretty much every single week I'd do the analysis session on the game before. So I'd earned enough respect from the players in terms of them working with me previously, for them to understand that yes I didn't have a playing career, but what I had done is had 17-18 years of experience on learning how to coach. I'd like to think they understood and respect the fact that I was a competent coach. And I have to say that the players at the 3 months that I did the caretaker role, they were magnificent for me.
And in terms, tell us a little bit about, and your communication with players in terms of, half-time team talks, you're losing, how do you inspire? What was the difference between that and then when you were working with the 23s or the 18s and, sort of communicating on pitch side in that pressure cooker environment of professional football?
Yeah, I think the key thing is consistency. So one of the things, and again, this was developed from within the academy at West Brom, that half-time team talks, you'd try and minimise it down to having three points in possession, 3 points out of possession, and then maybe a point that may interlink those with both transitions, so attack to defence and defence to attack. And that's something that I'd continue to do within the first team. And because Darren had also come through a process of assisting me in the 18s and 23s, Darren did it as well, so I think if you're winning, if you're losing, just to make sure that you have that consistency. So one of the things that we had at West Brom within the first team as well, which was introduced last season, we had a live feed. So we had an iPad in the dugout. So when I was a first team coach, I kind of knew the things that, obviously I was privy to the game plan points, what we were looking to do in possession and out of possession, and I was linked to the analysis. So if I seen anything on the grass that I thought we could utilise at half time to show the players, I'd get a clip. And that's something I continue to do with Jamie Smith. So Jamie Smith pretty much assisted me in that caretaker role, and I'd turn around to Jamie and say, "Get me a clip of that." So, we had the ability to stick to that level of consistency. Only speaking about 3 things with the ball and 3 things without the ball, but we had the ability to show the players good examples and bad examples of the things that we were looking to do, via the video. So, in the first 45 minutes, there may be an example. So I'll give you an example. In the playoff game against Villa, Villa's regroup shape was a 4-1-4-1, and we wanted to exploit the space either side of Whelan in the first game and Hourihane in the second game via the position of our 2-8s. And there were some good examples, so I'd clip a good example and say, look how easy it is. If we get between the lines and we get somebody front face, we're onto their back 4, and we can penetrate and we can create goal scoring chances. So, utilising that ability to reinforce positive or look at negative things to correct things was vitally important. But I guess to answer your question, and not to to go too far away from it, you're just that level of consistency. And of course, there's sometimes where you're going to go in and emotionally you're going to be more relaxed and in a more positive way, and sometimes some things can frustrate you, and sometimes you've got to mix up the tonality of your delivery. And I think that comes from experience, and not being false with it as well. Not thinking these are expecting a bollock and I'm going to give them one. I think it has to suit the environment and it has to suit the moment.
And I was going to ask this question because I see your excellent your little session plans you do on Twitter. Your little sessions of the board are really interesting and really beneficial for me as a coach. And just I saw a good one you did the other day with one of your pressing traps. Just wanted to ask you about pressing. I mean, obviously it's become really predominant, maybe with Guardiola and Klopp, and how important was that, or when you were with as a coach at that time, and how do you upskill your players into to understanding when and where to use that, and how effective was that?
I think during my time in my caretaker role, I probably reverted to a lot more of Tony's principles on making sure that we defended a little bit deeper, a little bit more compact. Now, if I was to walk into a job tomorrow, and I think most coaches would say this to you, that if you were to explain in very, very simple terms somebody's idealistic approach to managing a team and what you want, you'd want a team that recover the ball back off the pitch and quickly. So are you going to press, and you're going to be quick in transition, and you want a team that are going to control and dominate possession and create and score goals. So I think it is important. I think sometimes people we can look at pressing, and we can think about pressing, and everybody thinks about pressing being top half of the pitch. But for me, the triggers, the distances, the reaction to your unit, you as an individual, your mate, you as a team, I think it happens in any block. So for me, in terms of educating and delivering a pressing session, I think what's key and fundamental is that you recognise what players that you've got, what space you're comfortable on potentially giving away and conceding. So, i.e., we probably at times at West Brom probably didn't have an athletic enough centre half pairing or centre half three to be able to really press out the pitch. So we had to do it a little bit deeper. But if you've got athletes and you can press out the pitch, and obviously you can influence that, and your trigger lines, your distances, the position where you set your block and your trap are going to be different. So I think for me, fundamentally, it's just recognising what players you've got, but pressing triggers and pressing responses, and again, it will never change in the simplistic first nearest man, one go, we all go. No matter what block you're on the pitch, I think it's all relevant. So to answer your question, ideally, would I like to press out the pitch? Yes, I would. But I think you've got to look at your players' athleticism and your players' makeup. So lots of the most successful pressing teams, you look at Liverpool, they've just got athletic players across the pitch. Their level of intensity is incredible, but that's player based. If they lost maybe two players who play in their midfield three, and you replace them with players who are less able to run, then maybe you're not be able to do it, because if the front three get picked off, then the distances between that and your midfield three are going to be too big, and then the ability for those players to apply effective pressure on the ball and stay connected to your front three, that will change. So I think it's all dependent on what you've got in your squad and your player characteristics.
Do you look at stuff like trends in football? So, for instance, you look at Klopp, very much like you said, he mentioned has three real athletes in the middle, maybe different to conventional, where he doesn't play with maybe like a technical number 10 or 2/8, and maybe they'd play a little bit quicker than Guardiola's team, was much more possession based. Do you look at things like that and think, okay, maybe I need to? Do you move with the shifts and the paradigms of football, or you just you have your own philosophy and you just keep evolving? How important is that to look at what's happening at the very highest level?
Yeah, I think you have to, and I think you have to look at what's happening now, and you have to try and second guess what's going to happen, in 5 years' time, if you possibly can. And I remember going to an FA course, and Dick Bates said that. He said don't evaluate the game now. Try and evaluate the game in 5 or 10 years' time. What will it look like? And of course, nobody's got a crystal ball, but you need to be proactive. You need to look at that. But again, I look in my time out, I've been able to reflect a lot, look at the things that are very, very strong to me in terms of my principles of how I see the game played, how I'd like to prioritise how the game is played. But a lot of it comes down to players. So Liverpool are able to play that way, because, as I said, because of the physical makeup of their team, and that consequence of how they play is exactly how they train. I've been privy to speaking to people who have been inside the camp and have seen them work, and everything is geared around that. As you say, Liverpool are not playing the conventional system. So I look at Liverpool and I see Liverpool playing a Christmas tree. I see them playing 4-3-2-1, and I see them pressing in that shape as well, where their two eights, which would end up being their two wide players that tuck in and narrow in, Mane and Salah. They press from inside to out. So when the ball's on the outside, they press with an intensity, and that enables the midfield three to get across on the same side of the pitch as them, the back four to get round, and all of a sudden, because of how quick the pressing player goes and how quickly everybody else mirrors the ball in behind them, all of a sudden there's an effective press. But that comes via their training model, how they play, and their personnel. So would I love to be able to take a team that could do that? Yeah, of course I could, because there's nothing worse as a coach when you're playing up against a team that have a greater intensity than you, the greater work ethic than you, greater quality than you, because you're always on the back foot.
And then last couple of questions. I know you're a very busy man, Jim. How it was difficult? Talk about then it's time to leave West Brom. How difficult was that to deal with? You've been at that club a long time, and obviously now you've gone from being a working coach to being out of work. Obviously, something maybe synonymous with football life. But how difficult was that for you personally?
I have to say that's been the most difficult time in my whole, I'm going to say, career, probably my life. It's I've been removed away from doing something that I'm very, very passionate about, that I want to do. I'm a proud man. I want to be in work. So financially, I'm secure. I'm on garden leave from West Brom, so I'm still getting paid every month. But I've got 3 boys. 2 of them the eldest is 9, the middle one's 6. And they look at daddy being out of work. So there's a little bit of that where I feel a little bit demoralised that the kids look at daddy and daddy hasn't got a job, and they're too young to understand it. I understand it. It's a footballing world, and that happens within football. That very, very rare you're sacked or removed from a job, or you leave a job and fall straight into a job. So I'm currently in that situation where I have found it very, very, very difficult. I'm not too big of a person to say that there's been moments where I felt depressed and I felt very low, because the working week and the structure of the week has no meaning to me. It's Tuesday today. Now my Tuesday, my Fridays, and my Tuesday, my Saturdays at this moment in time are no different, because I've got no structure, and I'm finding that very, very difficult. But to counterbalance that, I've been hard at it, for a number of years. I think for 19 years. I said I've worked 7-day weeks, 6-day weeks. Your 6-day weeks, you still work on your day off, because your brain never tends to shut off in football. There's something you always want to look at and review. So, and to balance it out, it's been a great time to reflect. But I'm most definitely ready and chomping at the bit to get back in now.
Do you think you'd go back into academy football, or you think now you want to sort of go back into first team football as that first team manager?
Yeah, I've had 4 or 5 opportunities to go back in and work in academy football, and just at this moment in time, I think because of how I progressed in my coaching journey, because of where I left it, I've got this burning desire to want to be a manager and to want to be a head coach, and the longer it goes on that I'm unable to find a position or something fits me and something suits me, I'll have to reevaluate, and maybe if I'm not to be the head one, can I go and work with somebody as an assistant? Can I go and work as a first team coach? I think first and foremost, I want to try and remain working as at first team level. But if those things don't materialise, I've got a wife, I've got a young family, we've got a mortgage to pay. There'd be a big possibility that I'd go back and work at academy football. I am missing the grass. I'm missing being on the grass and and developing players and working with players to produce a game plan, and obviously then the big miss of match day. So at some stage within the next, I'm probably guessing by January or February, if I've not got back into it, I'm gonna have to have a real good look at myself and reevaluate the direction my career pathway goes.
And finally, what would be your one bit of advice for an aspiring young coach who'd like to step in your footsteps, your remarkable coaching journey?
I think you got to get your hands dirty. I think you have to expose yourself to as many coaching hours as you possibly can. You have to make as many mistakes as you possibly can. You've got to make lots of sacrifices. I've missed family weddings. To go and take an under 11 game. You look back at things and you think that was stupid, but it's part and parcel. I had that passion to want to improve the players, want to improve and develop myself. So I think you're going to have to make lots of sacrifices. I would try and attach myself to a mentor, or two or three mentors, or maybe a little bit different. Try and tap into as many coaching resources you possibly can. So, where we sit today with with social media and and the websites that are available now, there are millions of really, really good coaching resources that weren't available when I was a young coach. So I'll just throw yourself into it, immerse yourself into it, get your hands dirty, and try and make as many mistakes as you possibly can, via having as many coaching exposures to you, as you possibly can also.
Jimmy, thanks very much for your time, mate. It's been inspirational. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cheers, pal.
Thanks for tuning in to the MyPersonalFootballCoach.com Soccer Player Development Podcast. MyPersonalFootballCoach.com's Dynamic Ball Mastery Program is the world's leading online individual technical training program, proven and developed at the highest level in the English Premier League. Sign up now to train like the pros and take your game to the next level. Master the ball, master the game.